So I think it's generally a little bit of a cop out to say that, oh, we don't like trade because we just keep importing and we don't export. I think the onus is on India and the Indian economy. And I don't just mean the government and the public sector. I also mean the private sector of producing goods and services that are of world-class standard, that they can be exported to other countries to address the trade deficit. Now, of course, for the China case, there is more politics involved, but just on a general level, India's large trade deficit also has to do with the fact that it is not able to get its exports up to the right level that it wants. In Singapore, one of the major pangs of disappointment I could sense, not just from Singapore, but just from ASEAN, the region as a whole, is when India pulled out of RCEP. Now, India has its own reasons to pull out of RCEP. The number one reason was that it was afraid that Chinese goods would enter through the back door and it would worsen the trade deficit. But we have to realize that free trade agreements are not just completely about economics, they're also about politics. India's leaving RCEP in some sense showed that, is India really a responsible enough stakeholder for the rules-based order in Asia or not? And there were a number of conversations that I could see where people were just disappointed that India is choosing to just keep itself in a protectionist way and not understanding that if it has to grow as a major power, it has to grow in tandem with many of the other countries that are there in the region. For whatever reason, I can make out that the current political dispensation in India believes that the free trade agreements that it has signed, it's actually lost out on.
Yes.
I don't think it should be so black and white. I don't think that you should blame increasing imports and stagnating exports completely on the other side. I think there is cause for introspection that's there. But I would say that there's no point of getting too lost within is an FTA signed or not, but actually focus on the overall economic engagement in the region, both in terms of trade, both in terms of investment, both in terms of our Indian companies moving overseas. So again, not everything, just because you sign an FTA, mean everything is okay. Just because you don't sign an FTA doesn't mean that there's no economic engagement. But there's definitely a lot more that India can do in the region. Let's talk about how Bangladesh is doing. Now Bangladesh has been able to find one champion sector, RMG, ready-made garments, which is about 80 to 85% of its exports. It's now the world's second largest exporter after China. Now, India should introspect that how come Bangladesh is able to export more ready-made garments than India is able to. But the point is, a lot of economies, whether Bangladesh, whether Thailand, whether Malaysia, have understood that a certain level of export competitiveness is necessary. Now, in terms of having protectionism on an internal level, I think this is where India's scale goes against us, because it's so easy to become very, very rich just if you're a dominant player in India, that you don't really feel the need to go into smaller markets where there's higher levels of risk. I do hope this is changing. One of the things that I really enjoyed looking at of late was Adani Ports making an entry into Sri Lanka, where it's important to show that the giant Indian economy in South Asia is not just the government of India, but it's also Indian corporations that are going to other countries that can help us achieve our overall national interests. But at the same time, the private sector is able to do it at a level of efficiency, at a level of earning financial returns that are far greater than the public sector. So I would say protectionism in such a large country can lead to companies just getting quite lazy and quite, I would say, comfortable in the Indian market. Myanmar is obviously a very, very different case.
Right.
Myanmar is actually an even more interesting case, because this is where India's interests come up against things like democracy promotion, or whether we toe the line with the West in terms of the rules-based order. My opinion on this is perhaps different from most. I don't believe India should be in the process of advising other countries or what political systems they should use. I think the current Indian government shows that it doesn't appreciate advice from other countries. So, just to be consistent, it's probably not within New Delhi's remit to go in telling other countries how they should do. And just in terms of engagement, I did read in the media today that I think Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla will be going over there on a visit. I think that's very important. You can't choose your neighbors. They are who they are. You would have to go and engage with them, even if to some capitals in New York or London, they don't appear as if they are esteemed company. But we have to make do with where we live.